The North Atlantic was a battlefield like no other. The frigid waters churned beneath a sky heavy with storm clouds, and beneath the surface lurked a relentless enemy. German U-boats prowled these shipping lanes, silent and deadly, striking with terrifying efficiency. Merchant vessels vanished without warning, leaving only twisted metal and shattered lives in their wake. Britain's lifeline was under siege. Every shipment that didn't arrive threatened starvation, collapse, and defeat. The Axis powers believed they had discovered a formula for victory: sink faster than your enemy can replace. They calculated the numbers coldly, confident that Britain could not survive if its supply lines were cut. They had no idea how badly they had underestimated the industrial might of the United States. Across the ocean, American shipyards were preparing to rewrite the rules of naval construction. In those early years of the war, building a single cargo ship was a painstaking process. Riveting, laborious, and slow, it could take months for a single vessel to be ready for the seas. Yet, the U.S. faced a stark choice: either find a way to produce ships at a scale the world had never seen, or watch the Allies falter. The urgency was palpable. Every sunken vessel was not just a loss of cargo, it was a challenge to American ingenuity, a test of whether speed, precision, and innovation could overcome the horrors of war. Intelligence reports poured in daily, painting a grim picture of the Atlantic. Convoys were attacked relentlessly, lives were lost. The cold water claimed not just the ships, but the hope of those depending on them. And yet, somewhere in the minds of America's engineers and industrialists, a daring plan began to take shape, one that would change the course of the war. Standardization, prefabrication, and assembly line construction were not just words, they were weapons in a different kind of battle. The vision was audacious: take a design, break it into hundreds of sections, and assemble a full-sized 10,000-ton cargo ship in a fraction of the time it would normally take. The notion seemed almost impossible. Could a nation, pressed for manpower and resources, overcome the limitations of traditional shipbuilding? Could ordinary steel and rivets give way to welded sections pieced together like a gigantic puzzle? The stakes were enormous. Every delay could mean more loss in the Atlantic. Every misstep could spell disaster for troops depending on those supplies. Yet, amid the pressure and fear, American shipyards began to hum with a new kind of rhythm. Sparks flew from welding torches. Prefabricated hull sections were lifted into place with precision. Teams of workers, many of them women and African Americans who had never worked in shipbuilding before, moved in coordinated efficiency. They were not just building ships, they were racing against the tide of war itself. The story of the North Atlantic in those dark months was one of tension and terror, of destruction and resilience. But it was also the story of innovation, determination, and a quiet confidence that even the deadliest U-boat could not outrun the American drive to survive and overcome. The Axis powers thought they had the advantage, that the Atlantic would drown the Allies in loss and despair. They had no idea that on the American shores, a revolution in shipbuilding was quietly gathering momentum, one that would soon unleash an unstoppable tide of liberty ships across the oceans, tipping the scales of war in ways they could never have imagined.
Across the United States, engineers and shipbuilders faced a monumental challenge. The solution lay not in building bigger ships or hiring more laborers, but in rethinking the very process of ship construction. The design that would become the Liberty ship began with a British concept, an emergency cargo vessel meant to be simple, fast, and functional. American engineers took that basic blueprint and transformed it, adapting it for mass production on a scale the world had never seen. They abandoned traditional riveting, a slow and labor-intensive process, in favor of welding, a technique that allowed ships to be assembled from prefabricated sections with unprecedented speed. Each ship became a giant puzzle, broken down into hundreds of modules, built simultaneously in separate parts of the yard, and then fitted together like clockwork. The idea was revolutionary. Where it once took months to build a single vessel, this new method promised to cut construction time drastically. The logic was clear. Speed was survival. Henry J. Kaiser, the industrialist behind the effort, had already proven himself in shipbuilding and infrastructure projects, but this was a challenge unlike any he had faced. He envisioned a factory-like approach, borrowing principles from the automotive assembly line, but applied on a scale so massive it reshaped shipyards and redefined labor. Prefabrication meant that specialized teams could work on multiple sections at once. Hull plates, decks, and bulkheads were produced in different areas, then transported to the slipway for final assembly. Welding allowed tighter, stronger joints, reducing the need for highly skilled riveters who were increasingly scarce because able-bodied men were being drafted to fight. Women and African American workers, many with no prior experience in heavy industry, stepped into the yards. They were trained, organized, and empowered to take part in a war effort that had previously been closed to them. Every weld, every bolt, every lifted section was a testament to adaptability, ingenuity, and national determination. Engineers faced challenges at every step. The steel used had to withstand the harsh Atlantic waters, and designs had to balance speed with durability. Innovations came rapidly. If one method failed, it was analyzed, improved, and implemented across the next ship, creating a feedback loop of constant improvement. By the time the first Liberty ships rolled out of the yards, the world had never seen anything like it. A massive cargo vessel, assembled not in isolation, but as part of a synchronized, modular industrial ballet. These ships were more than vessels, they were symbols of American resolve, a statement that the industrial capacity of a nation could match and exceed the destructive power of the enemy. It was audacious, it was risky, and it was unprecedented. And as the first of these ships left the slipways, fully equipped and ready to sail into the dangerous waters of the Atlantic, one thing became clear. The Liberty ship was not just a response to war, it was a declaration that innovation, teamwork, and determination could turn the tide against even the most powerful threats. In a matter of months, concepts that had seemed impossible became tangible, steel giants that would carry troops, weapons, and hope across oceans. The Liberty ship program was no longer a plan, it was a force, one that would redefine industrial warfare and set the stage for records, speed, and heroic feats that the world would remember for generations. On November 12, 1942, something extraordinary happened in Richmond, California. At Henry J. Kaiser Shipyard, workers gathered along the slipways, aware that they were about to witness a feat the world had never seen. The SS Robert E. Peary, a Liberty ship named after the famed Arctic explorer, was set to be launched. What made this event remarkable was not just the size of the vessel, it was how quickly it had been built. From the moment the keel was laid to the time she slipped into the water, only 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes had passed. The industrial world stood in awe. Ships that once took months to construct had now been assembled in less than a week. Every section had been prefabricated, every weld precisely aligned, every team performing its role in a symphony of coordination and innovation. The shipyard itself was a marvel of organization. Hundreds of workers, many of them women and African Americans, stepping into roles they had never held before, moved with purpose and skill. Cranes lifted massive hull sections, welders, sparks flying in synchronized bursts. Laborers, some nervous, some exhilarated, watched as steel giants rose from the ground as if by magic. Yet behind this display of speed and efficiency lay intense pressure. Engineers had to ensure that a ship built in mere days would withstand the harsh seas of the Atlantic and the dangers of war. Mistakes could be catastrophic, but every calculation, every test, every reinforced weld spoke to the meticulous planning that had gone into the project. As the SS Robert E. Peary slid into the water, cheering erupted. Cameras clicked, workers hugged, some wiping tears from eyes hardened by months of relentless labor. The world had never seen such a display of industrial power. But the story of the Peary was not only about speed, it was also about courage and resilience. Soon after her launch, she was put into service in the Pacific Theater, carrying vital supplies to soldiers under enemy fire. Her crew faced storms, Japanese attacks, and the constant threat of torpedoes, yet the ship performed flawlessly, proving that rapid construction did not mean compromise. This record-breaking achievement became more than a symbol of industrial might. It became a rallying point for the American people, a proof that determination and innovation could overcome seemingly impossible odds. Kaiser's methods would soon be applied to dozens of other shipyards, creating a fleet of Liberty ships capable of sustaining the Allies across the globe. Each new vessel pushed the boundaries of speed and efficiency, but the SS Robert E. Peary remained legendary, an example of what could be accomplished when necessity demanded genius. Beyond the statistics and the records, the story captured the imagination of a nation. Newspapers heralded the feat, and morale soared both on the home front and in distant theaters of war. Soldiers and sailors knew that these ships, built in record time, could deliver the supplies they desperately needed, turning the tide against an enemy that had once seemed unstoppable. The SS Robert E. Peary was more than a ship. She was a testament to American ingenuity, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a workforce determined to meet any challenge. And as she steamed out of Richmond Harbor into the vast waters of the Pacific, she carried with her not just cargo, but the confidence of a nation that had discovered how to turn industry into an unstoppable weapon of war.
The story of the Liberty ships was not without its trials. While the record-breaking speed of construction inspired awe, it also brought unforeseen challenges. As these steel giants took to the seas, engineers quickly discovered that innovation carried risks. In the icy waters of the North Atlantic, some of the earliest ships suffered catastrophic structural failures. Sections of hulls cracked, some even broke in half, sending cargo and supplies to the depths. Investigations revealed the culprit: brittle steel, unable to withstand the sudden stress and cold temperatures. What had been a triumph on the slipway now became a battle against nature and physics itself. Yet failure did not halt progress. American engineers, faced with these urgent problems, approached them with the same ingenuity that had revolutionized shipbuilding. Materials were tested, welding techniques refined, and design adjustments made to strengthen hulls without slowing production. Each disaster became a lesson, and each lesson led to improvement. Prefabricated sections were re-evaluated, stress points reinforced, and welds carefully inspected to prevent further fractures. The shipyards became laboratories of innovation, where trial and error moved at unprecedented speed. Workers on the assembly lines learned from these lessons, adapting techniques as new knowledge emerged. The workforce, already remarkable for its diversity and skill, now demonstrated extraordinary resilience. Women who had never touched a welding torch before mastered precision under pressure. African American workers, often excluded from industrial roles before the war, proved indispensable, performing critical tasks that ensured ships could survive harsh seas and enemy threats. The challenges were not limited to material science. Logistics, coordination, and timing were constant hurdles. Moving prefabricated sections across massive shipyards, aligning them perfectly on the slipway, and ensuring every weld held required discipline and ingenuity. A single misalignment could compromise the integrity of a ship, yet the assembly line approach demanded speed. Engineers, supervisors, and laborers worked in harmony, balancing efficiency with precision. By 1943, the improvements bore fruit. Cracks became rare, ships became stronger, and the production pace accelerated. 3 Liberty ships were launched every single day, each one a workhorse ready to carry vital supplies across perilous waters. The early failures, though dramatic, had forced a revolution in construction practices. Welding standards were codified, materials science advanced, and prefabrication techniques became more precise than ever. In effect, the failures of the first Liberty ships had reshaped shipbuilding forever, turning what could have been a catastrophic weakness into a permanent advantage. Beyond the technical challenges, the human story was equally compelling. Workers endured long hours, extreme heat, sparks flying, and the constant hum of industrial machinery. Yet morale was high, fueled by the knowledge that every ship launched might carry food, ammunition, or hope to soldiers on the front lines. The stakes were visible in every completed hull, and the urgency of war created a relentless rhythm that drove innovation. By confronting and solving these engineering challenges, America demonstrated something profound, that even in the face of repeated setbacks, rapid adaptation, creative problem-solving, and unwavering teamwork could transform potential disaster into triumph. The Liberty ships that emerged from this crucible were stronger, faster, and more reliable than anyone had dared to imagine. And each time a ship left the slipway, it carried with it the lessons of the past, a testament to resilience, and a promise that no challenge, neither the frozen Atlantic, nor enemy torpedoes, nor the limits of steel, could halt the American drive to victory.
By the time the Liberty ships were rolling off American slipways in force, their impact on the war was undeniable. These 10,000-ton steel giants were no longer just experiments in industrial innovation, they were lifelines. Across the Atlantic and the Pacific, Allied forces relied on them to carry the supplies, ammunition, and food that sustained entire armies. The sheer scale of production was staggering. At the peak of the program, 3 new Liberty ships were launched every single day, each one built faster and stronger than the last. They became the backbone of supply lines, proving that American industry could outpace destruction. The story of the SS Robert E. Peary and her sister ships extended far beyond construction records. These vessels sailed into combat zones, braving storms, enemy fire, and the ever-present threat of U-boats. They delivered critical cargoes to embattled troops, rescued stranded soldiers, and sometimes carried more than just supplies. They carried hope. The bravery of the crews was matched by the resilience of the ships themselves. Each vessel had been engineered to survive the harshest conditions, and each journey demonstrated that the lessons learned from early failures had been applied with remarkable precision. As the Liberty fleet grew, the psychological impact on both sides of the conflict became evident. Allied soldiers knew that reinforcements and supplies would continue to arrive, no matter how fiercely the enemy tried to cut them off. Conversely, German commanders realized that no matter how many ships they sank, American shipyards could replace them faster than ever before. This relentless output turned the tide of the Battle of the Atlantic. Beyond logistics, the Liberty ships symbolized something far greater, the industrial and social transformation of the United States. Women, previously confined to domestic roles, now commanded welding torches and cranes. African Americans, often excluded from skilled labor, now found themselves at the center of a national effort. Their work not only fueled the war effort, but challenged long-standing social barriers, leaving a legacy that would endure long after the conflict ended. By the end of the war, a total of 2,710 Liberty ships had been launched. Each vessel carried the combined ingenuity of engineers, the determination of laborers, and the unwavering commitment of a nation united behind a common goal. They sailed thousands of miles across dangerous oceans, delivering vital cargoes to ports in Europe, Africa, and the Pacific Islands. In doing so, they directly influenced the outcome of campaigns, supported the liberation of occupied territories, and helped secure victory for the Allies.
The Liberty ships were more than just steel and welds. They were embodiments of industrial power, human courage, and the capacity to overcome adversity. They proved that even in the face of relentless enemy attacks, logistical challenges, and material failures, a nation that embraced innovation and teamwork could alter the course of history. And as these ships steamed into harbors filled with cheering troops and civilians alike, they carried not only cargo, but the undeniable message that American ingenuity, resilience, and determination could not be defeated. The Liberty Ship program became a defining chapter of World War II, leaving a legacy of speed, innovation, and courage that would inspire generations. Each vessel was a testament to what could be achieved when necessity demanded genius, proving that in the vast, perilous waters of war, industrial might and human spirit together could turn the tide of history.